Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Life in the dark is like a child's game of whack-a-mole, except that the game has a way of ending. You take the blindfold off your eyes, the bright light is blinding, but after a couple of seconds everything is fine. You are back in the familiar world. The game is over. But the real blindness is no longer a game. It does not end. You cannot remove the blindfold. You just have to try hard to get used to your new world and hope that one day you will get used to it. Caroline Clark was up at 5 o'clock in the morning. As she grew older, she spent less and less time sleeping, although she had once dreamed that when she retired, she would sleep. It seems she never dreamed of anything else in her life. Well, here is the retirement, and sleep in a human way. Caroline has not learned. Too accustomed all her life to jump out of bed before morning dawn and run to do household chores. Well, what you need to redo, it's time to go to work, and from work you go the second series. Spin, spin, maybe then and go to bed early by midnight. That's partly why she was so infuriated by her sister-in-law's laziness to sleep until 6, because she herself had never had such happiness. The alarm clock gave its usual cheerful trill. 6, time to get up. Lisa reached out to turn off the annoying tune, but her palm slapped against the cool surface of the dresser. Her eyes were a mess, and for some reason she couldn't find her phone right away. Why? She grinned sadly. You'd think that was news. It was just that my eyesight had gotten worse again, and it had been happening all the time lately, so I couldn't even get used to it. As they say, not by the day, but by the hour, that is, by the alarm clock, Lisa fumbled for her phone and turned off the reminder. Squinting and trying not to panic, she glanced around the room. It was squalid. Really, really bad. The outline of the dresser was blurring, though she could still make out the drawers, the handles on them, though she couldn't see them at all anymore. The bright rectangle of the window, there it was, partially hidden by the curtains, but the patterns on them could not be seen. At least, not with the naked eye, but the closet on the far wall was no longer distinguishable at all, so big and inarticulate, a dark brown stain on the light background of wallpaper. Oh, and had to fight with her mother-in-law for this wallpaper. Caroline did not want to reconcile with her daughter-in-law's choice of light-colored wallpaper. They will turn yellow. In a year you'll re-glue them. We will. Lisa agreed nonchalantly. The mother-in-law pressed her lips together resentfully. She's a millionaire, too. You're used to shoveling money in. That's why you don't feel bad about changing the wallpaper every year. Lisa looked helplessly at her husband, Paul. He decided to comfort both of them at once. He put his arm around his wife's waist and smiled at his mother. Mom will look at the wallpaper at the store and see if we can find a darker one. The kind we like. You don't need dark wallpaper, Ashole. You need variegated wallpaper. In the flower there, in the herringbone, and not boring and again beneficial. If where flies sit, or a spot will appear, will be invisible. Right suggestion, Mother. With enthusiasm supported Paul. Exactly, Lisa. Tomorrow we'll go and look at the colorful wallpaper. At least you are my son with brains. Satisfied Mother said, maybe you'll live somehow. Before leaving the room of the newlyweds, she once again looked at her daughter-in-law and shook her head sadly. You only, son, do not give your wife the will. When the door behind the mother-in-law finally closed, Lisa attacked her husband with a furious whisper. What do you mean, Paul? We decided together that we wanted light-colored wallpaper, didn't we? We did. Nodded. We decided together. And when your mom has her say, you take her side instead of supporting me. That's just the way it looks, Lisa," Paul said with affectionate condescension in his voice. "You're being superficial, short-sighted. My mom is an old-school person, not formatted for the new times. Right? Right. So what's the use of trying to change her mind? She won't change, and so, to avoid scandals, and for the sake of keeping peace in the family, it's best to do what? Agree and then do it your way. Tomorrow we'll go to the store, buy light-colored wallpaper, then say that the cute modeled ones were not found. Is that slick?" "Very," Lisa mumbled, though she disagreed inwardly. Why should she ever have to answer to her mother-in-law for her own choice of wallpaper? "Paul," she began without much hope, "couldn't we get our own place?" "There you go again. No, listen to me. You understand. Your mom is good, but here we think of ways to avoid quarrels, and she interferes in our personal affairs. It's unpleasant, but I have to bite my tongue, because it's her house, and she's the boss, and this way we'd live independently. Do you like to live like that?" Paul sighed heavily and turned away. "We've talked about this, Lisa." Slowly he said, "Mom is a lonely person. She's buried my father for 10 years, and I'm the only one she has left. If you and I move out, what will she be left with? Wander around an empty house and gradually go crazy. No one to say a word. I know she has a temper, but what reason is there to abandon a loved one? And she's old. She'll fall, for example, and you can't call anyone for help. You can't do that, you know." I understand. Of course, she understood that Caroline Clark is a stranger to her, but Paul is her mother. It's understandable that he's worried about her. They managed to defend the light-colored wallpaper, though it was not without a scandal on Caroline's part, accusing her son of willessness and Lisa of stupidity. But now the wallpaper has served its purpose, and the cupboard stands out against it. "Lisa," my mother-in-law's voice came from behind the door. "Stop lying there. I heard the alarm clock. Get up, you lazybones." That's how her mother-in-law speaks to her, affectionately, warmly, and most importantly with deep respect. "I'm up now, Caroline." Lisa responded, "Thank you for reminding me." There was a tense silence outside the door. A second later, it exploded with a resentful cry. "Paul." As Lisa dressed, she heard Caroline complaining to her son in the kitchen. "Son, where did you find her? Such a rude girl. How much longer is she gonna be mean to me?" I tell her, "Lisa, honey, it's time to get up," and she tells me what? "Thanks for reminding me." Who is she after that? Talk to her. Explain that the husband's mother must be respected, or there will be no peace in the family. I will. Paul spoke with a full mouth. He was in a hurry to work, and therefore hoped to combine breakfast with listening to Mom's complaints. It was, predictably, not going well. Caroline couldn't stand it when anyone listened to her while she ate. She liked absolute attention. And the time of day and the needs of her listeners were in no way taken into account. Can you even put the spoon away when you're talking to Mom? You chew like you're not listening. No, I'm listening, but I can't put the spoon away, Mom. I have to go to work. Here we go. Sorry, Mommy, bye. Lisa entered the kitchen just at the moment when the mother-in-law, having seen her son off, sighed bitterly. He has no time to talk to his mother, so raise them, such ungrateful people. Feed, eat. Do not sleep through the night, all to them, and grow up, so they and listen to a native man is not willing. Maybe their mother needs something. Maybe it's her. When Caroline saw her daughter-in-law, she switched immediately. What a life you young people have. You lie in bed until dinner. But I remember getting up before dawn and run, go get water, splash yourself with ice water in the face, and like washed. Then prepare breakfast for everyone, wake them all up, sit them at the table, but you already grabbed something on the run, and that's enough from you. Yours are sitting sleepy munching porridge, and you're already standing at the mirror, painting your eyelashes. What have you got? A multi-cooker. And Caroline looked reproachfully at the device she hated, as if accusing it of the laziness and carelessness of today's youth. Lisa nodded with feigned understanding. Yes, that's right. My grandmother told me that all day long you only have time to spin around. But as long as I remember her, she was always so cheerful and well-groomed woman. Her hair was always done, makeup, and she had time to sew new dresses in the evenings. Caroline sighed, as if agreeing with her daughter-in-law's words, and Lisa was encouraged. Maybe at least this morning would be relatively calm. And here's the interesting thing, Lisa continued with inspiration. In the past, there seemed to be a lot of work to do, and everything at home was done by hand, and even diapers for children were not even available. But people were still somehow more cheerful, more energetic. It was an attempt to extinguish another outbreak of irritation, but mother-in-law was not so easy to spend. You are young people and would take an example from us, because you are all too good at talking. At revenge, it's not like a bag of sacks. Somebody who understands. Lisa didn't listen. She wanted to eat breakfast, but she had to take a plate and a spoon. And she didn't want Caroline to see how uncertain her movements had become. Her mother-in-law had long ago noticed that Lisa's vision had become worse, but she had not yet realized the extent of the impending disaster. "Why don't you sit down to eat?" Caroline suddenly asked. "Do you have plenty of time to sit around?" "A carload." Lisa smiled. "I have a vacation from today." She was glad she couldn't see the expression on her mother-in-law's face, but her tone was already expressive. Oh, Caroline wailed, retiring to her room. What kind of young people are these? A vacation, a weekend. Idle, insolent, lazy. Now the whole vacation will lie on their backs. She should work and not complain. She's on vacation. She finally slammed the door of her own bedroom, and Lisa knew exactly what would follow. Her mother-in-law would lie down on her wide double bed, make herself comfortable, that is, with pillows, and pull out a huge plate full of candy and cookies from under the bed. She'll chew and watch TV. Her favorite show was about to start, an hour and a half of happiness and a chance to eat breakfast in peace. Lisa gulped down her oatmeal, unable to taste it. Today she had to go to the city to see an ophthalmologist. At the local polyclinic, they couldn't tell her anything good, but they scared her half to death. The ophthalmologist turned out to be a formidable man with a large bald head and a sleepy face. He listened to Lisa's complaints about her rapidly deteriorating eyesight, absent-mindedly, yawning and grunting. When she stopped talking, he stared at her as if he'd just noticed she was here. "So what are you complaining about?" he asked. "My eyesight," Lisa repeated patiently. "I've been seeing a lot worse in the last 2 months, and it's getting worse and worse. Do you watch a lot of television?" "Not at all." "I see." In a dull voice, the doctor said, "So you're on the phone all the time, which is very, very busy." He yawned. "Unhealthy. All right, well, what am I supposed to do now? Maybe some drops or glasses? Tell me, will I buy whatever I need? Eat plenty of blueberries." That's what he said. "And glasses, well, if you insist, sit here." Let's have a look. The chart gave shocking results. Lisa's eyesight was not just bad, it was terrible. The sleepy look on the ophthalmologist's face vanished. How do you even see anything? How do you walk on the road? You could get hit by a car. How? When did it start? 2 months ago, I told you. Was everything okay before that? Your eyesight was good. Yes, Lisa answered with a shrug. At least I didn't complain. Maybe not perfect vision, but good. The doctor was jotting something down in the medical chart. Think back. Have you fallen recently? Maybe, huh? Maybe you were pushed on the bus? Maybe hit your head on something. Any accidents? No, nothing like that. Strange, but anyway here. He handed her a thickly written piece of paper. I've written you a referral to the Institute of Ophthalmology. You'll have to go to the city. Here. He waved his hands guiltily. But you're a doctor, aren't you? Can't you do anything at all? At least diagnose? We don't have the appropriate equipment here, and the level of specialists you need is not the same. Go to the city. And don't delay. Time is of the essence. Is it serious? She asked. You just tell me the truth. Is it that serious? I don't know, the doctor answered honestly. I can't tell you anything for sure. It happened 2 weeks ago, and for 2 weeks Lisa lived in agonizing anxiety. Her eyesight, as if someone had jinxed her, was deteriorating more and more each day. She tried to calm down and keep a cool head, but it was too hard. One late evening, lying in bed, she couldn't stand it and burst into tears and told everything to her husband. But Paul, listening to his wife's confused and nervous story, only laughed and patted Lisa on the shoulder like a frightened child. Don't get upset over nothing, Lisa. Soon you'll have a vacation, then you can go to the city, to that eye institute of theirs. I'll tell you it's just eye fatigue. You should probably read less. That's what. And you're always with textbooks, dictionaries, notebooks. That's how you hurt your eyesight. Teachers often wear glasses. For some reason, Lisa felt offended, although she knew perfectly well that her husband just wanted to calm her down. But it turned out as if he didn't consider her problem worthy of attention. No, she reassured herself. Nothing offensive had happened. He, on the contrary, wanted to distract me that Paul character does not know, and he is always like that, from the problems dismisses. And maybe he's right. Don't tell your mom, Lisa asked. She doesn't like me, and if she finds out, she'll kill me. I won't, promised her husband, and after thinking about it, added, but you shouldn't talk about Mom like that. She's not such a monster. Paul again stroked his wife's round shoulder and turned over on his side. He could not sleep. He felt bad for his mother, though he knew better than others that her character was not sugary, but still he pitied her and tried to make her life a little happier. What did she see, Mother? She finished 9 grades, and in the 3rd year of technical school was already with a belly. Paul's father didn't think about marriage, but his parents insisted. But they didn't care about their grandson. They cared about getting a free housekeeper. Caroline for their generosity, for the fact that Paul grandson recognized from morning to night the whole house washed. She worked in the vegetable garden, cooked for the whole family, but no one was going to fee her for free. She was assigned to the local school librarian, half a day's work, and the money drops. Salary, however, all to a cent, father-in-law took away. Maybe Caroline would not have lived to her years if after retirement her parents-in-law did not move to the south, to their eldest son far away. They left the house to the younger one, of course, with strict instructions. In his house, be the master, do not give a woman a free hand. She has brains like a chicken. And my father strictly followed this rule, tyrannizing his uncomplaining wife. It was said that he cheated on her often, and as if he made one more son on the side, but Paul did not know anything reliably, and his mother did not want to find out. And only after burying her husband, who fell off the roof on a great drunkenness, Caroline was able to straighten her back and take her eyes off the ground. Here, It would seem, and freedom to you, live and be happy. But hear a new joy. The son brought his wife into the house. Mother hated her daughter-in-law from the very first minute, but the desire to separate and live separately resisted with tiger fury. Paul couldn't understand what it was all about, but in time he did. Caroline was taking revenge, taking out all her anger on Lisa, on her mother-in-law, on her husband, who obeyed them blindly in everything. At the fate that had treated her, Caroline, so unfairly. Unfair, and for that injustice, for all that she had been through, Paul pitied his mother. And Lisa, his dear wife, felt sorry for her too. Now she endures every day from her mother-in-law, both swearing and ridicule for his sake. If only he could make Lisa look at his mother with his own eyes. He persuaded, asked, explained, but the wife never felt compassion for her mother-in-law. And most of all, he felt sorry for himself. He swims between his women as between two fires, and there is no end to this tossing. Lisa was sobbing quietly on her pillow. "Don't cry, Lisa, it will be all right." Paul mumbled sleepily and immediately fell asleep, exhausted by his sad thoughts. In the Institute of Ophthalmology, where she came, clutching in her hand a referral for an examination, it was spacious, bright, and cool. In the first few seconds, Lisa, accustomed to small rural buildings, almost panicked when she found herself in the huge lobby. Her head was dizzy from the large space. How did they work here? They must be used to it. But soon enough the anxiety receded. At the reception desk, she was greeted with smiles, soft voices, and when she found out that her vision was too damn bad, she was taken by the hand to the right office. The doctor was kind and, not unlike his rural colleague, listened to Lisa very attentively, without distracting her and only occasionally asking clarifying questions. But now the panic began to return to her. "You see, Lisa," the doctor said thoughtfully, "this is something, well, completely unknown. I confess to you frankly, I've never encountered anything like this before." "No, I certainly haven't." "You've never encountered what?" she asked. "What is it? Is it some kind of rare disease?" "A virus, maybe?" He rubbed his chin grimly. "That's the thing, no. It's not a disease at all. I'd say by all accounts you're perfectly healthy. You should be able to see, but for some reason, and you yourself say it's getting worse." "Every day," Lisa confessed. "For example, yesterday I could recognize the pattern on the curtains 5 feet away from me, and today I can't. And I can't see the knobs on the dresser, but yesterday I could recognize them. Yes, it's just a wild mishap." "But what should I do, doctor?" she asked impatiently. "Give me something, some kind of treatment. Injections, drops, pills, ointments, treatments. Something should help." "Right? How is that possible? You saw a man, and then you went blind in the middle of nowhere. Do you believe that?" "I'm sorry, Lisa," the doctor replied tiredly, "but you see, to make an appointment, I need a specific diagnosis, and I don't have one. I can't. I have no right to prescribe you something stronger than ordinary vitamins, but they won't help in your case. You understand, don't you?" Her heart dropped. "And the prognosis?" In a shaky voice, Lisa asked. The doctor was silent. He remained silent for a long time, drumming his fingers on the table and not looking up at the patient. "Unfavorable, huh?" "Yes, tell me. At this rate of deterioration, you'll lose your sight within a week," he said quietly. "Try not to lose heart. Don't despair. You know, people live without sight and even manage to work. Do you really need eyes for your work?" "I work in a school, teaching literature. I see, I understand. then maybe you should think about changing your field. For example, you could try to learn massage techniques. You know, blind people make excellent masseurs. You know, when one sense organ fails, the others become more sensitive. That's why blind masseurs have magic hands. And he, it was very noticeable, had a hard time consoling. Lisa understood him and did not judge him. How do you cheer up a man who in a week will be an invalid? "Thank you for the counseling," she said, standing up. "I'll be going now, thank you." "Wait," the doctor stopped her. "You're a villager, aren't you?" "I don't really believe that myself, of course, but..." "But what?" "Look for your grandmother. You know, there are witch doctors in the villages. Why don't you ask around? Try her. Will it help?" Lisa grinned. It was so strange to hear this from a certified ophthalmologist with a scientific degree. "How can I put it, Lisa? I know cases when official medicine refused at a complete dead end, and semi-literate Bacchus coped. Why? Honestly, I don't know. Either they're closer to nature, or they really know the unknown. I don't know, Lisa, but you should try it. There's nothing to lose." "I don't think it'll be any worse." "Yes," she whispered. "Really, there's nothing to lose. The doctors can't help." Lisa took the bus back, and for the first time she felt long and dreary on the way home. It was raining outside the window. The bus was moving slowly, bouncing on the bumps, and the passengers were peacefully dozing, waiting for their stops. Lisa didn't want to sleep at all. She thought bitterly about her life, and then she was transported by thoughts to her near future, when she would have to relearn the world and learn elementary things. How would she learn to put on makeup, write a message, cook a meal, and after all, how would she find out the prices at the store, count the cash, and check the change? That was going back in time, back to the days when their Paul and love had just begun to blossom. Was there love? Maybe it had just dulled to someone who had given her a drop of heart and kindness. I wonder if she would have refused to marry him then, stayed in the city, continued to rent her one-room apartment? Of course, we can say that then Lisa would have been deprived of love and family happiness, but she would have been spared the need to move to the village, to endure the disgusting character of her mother-in-law, and would still meet on weekends with girlfriends, strolling along the brightly lit evening promenade, would brew herself a fragrant coffee and scratch behind the ears of her favorite cat. After moving into the house to Paul's mother, and the real coffee, brewed in a turbine, had to forget. Mother-in-law for some reason recognized exclusively instant drink, but seeing in Lisa's hands a copper turbine, read a whole lecture on the subject. Boiled coffee is for the bourgeoisie, and we ordinary people don't need such fiddles. In the end, she got so fed up with her lamentations that Lisa threw the cup away. Caroline was relieved, though not for long, and the cat had to be given to a friend. Lisa desperately missed her ginger bandit. She had picked him up as a tiny kitten, dirty and flea-ridden. And to give him hope for a happy new life, she named him Monsieur. "You're going to be French," Lisa said, washing the squeaky lump in a basin of warm water. "You will grow up serious, important, refined. Maybe you won't be handsome. I don't promise you that, but that's all right. But you will be the most charming. No one can resist you." And the kitten, as if accepting his mistress's prophecy as a guide to action, fulfilled it exactly. True, Monsieur called him not often. He was more willing to respond to music, but only in the new house he did not have to take him. On this occasion, Lisa was upset to the extreme. "Mommy is terribly allergic to fur." "The fault," Paul explained. "Snot runs down her throat. She sneezes all the time." "Isn't there somewhere you can put him?" "Good hands, of course." On the last day before we left, Lisa put music in his carrier and put his bowls and toys in his backpack. "Don't worry, her friend urged her on. "He will settle in well with me. We will feed him, take care of him, love him, and in summer we will go for walks, of course on a leash." Lisa nodded sadly and smiled. She knew it was all true. The cat would be taken care of, but she couldn't forget the cat's eyes. He looked so shocked, as if he couldn't believe that his beloved owner had decided to leave him. At that time, Lisa thought she had no choice. She was so in love, and like every woman in love, she was ready to do anything crazy just to be near her prince. And now she was sadly asking herself, was it worth it? And the answer she had to give herself was not too cheerful. Paul's husband seems to be a nice, sweet, definitely a nice guy for whom nothing is dearer than peace and quiet in the family. He's so big and warm, you want to wrap yourself in him like a blanket and bask, bask, bask. Of course, he's a little bit ugly and completely devoid of ambition, strives for development, money, impressions. All this is not about him. And he is not a romantic. You can't look at the stars with him. He would rather lie down on a sofa and watch TV. Well, a hobby is a hobby, not worse than others, but he is constant, balanced, soft. So he cares for his mother in a touching way. He is a wonderful, devoted son, but at the same time, a bonus to Paul comes his precious mom, Caroline, who has no life without constant whining and complaining. Instead of her favorite exciting job, trips to conferences, participation in contests, Lisa now has a half-time job at a school that will close not today so tomorrow, because there are almost no kids. City friends remained in city life. They called each other less and less often, and during Lisa's infrequent visits to the city, they could not get together. One day, Lisa decided to see if her friends were in touch with each other. In the old days, they used to meet every Saturday at their favorite cafe to have breakfast and discuss the news of the week. Lisa arrived in town on a Saturday morning and went to a familiar cafe, but sat far away from the entrance at the farthest table. Half an hour later, the first friend walked through the door. She was usually a little late, but today she turned out to be an early bird. Two others pulled up after her. At their table, there were bursts of happy laughter. Lisa had once sat there and laughed carefree and with them, but now the sight was painful. So their company hadn't abandoned their traditions. It was just that Lisa had become uninteresting to them. And instead of a cozy apartment, morning fragrant coffee and a cat, instant nonsense, and an allergy to wool. It's called finding love but losing yourself. Sad. And it seems like it would be even sadder. And maybe if she'd stayed in the city and her eyes would have stayed intact, who knows? From the bus stop to the house, Lisa walked slowly, trying her best to see and memorize the countryside before it was forever hidden under the black blanket of her blindness. It would be something to remember. Caroline was already curious about her daughter-in-law's whereabouts, and of course, met Lisa on the doorstep. Complaints, resentments, and reproaches, which instantly sprang from the horn of plenty. "Lisa, where is your conscience? You didn't have time to go on vacation, so you ran to the city to go to your friends to gather gossip. Why don't you stay at home, like a normal wife, and help me with the garden? Why don't you mop the floors like you don't know I can't bend my back? I'll wash them later. I'll just rest a little after the road." That's her whole story. So, as to have fun, so she runs, and as to clean up the house, so it's later. What's Paul going to say? Have you thought about that? So he goes to work and his wife goes out for a walk? You could have cooked for your husband if you had nothing to do. I cooked it yesterday. Lisa replied tiredly, unceremoniously pushing past her mother-in-law into the house. There's soup and a roast. How can a good hostess feed a man with yesterday's dinner? Caroline almost howled. She really did not like such a calm, almost indifferent reaction of her daughter-in-law, and she intended by all means to get a good squabble. "I saw your soup and roast yesterday, and I almost felt sick. Who cooks like that, Lisa? You chopped up everything in a pot, just chunks of it." "What? Not neat. Did you chop the potatoes with an axe? It's sickening. Don't look." And how not to look if Paul is sitting in the kitchen, poor tortured, eating, and he has eyes like a beaten dog? A wife. He told me it was delicious. Here I am, for example, I've lived 30 years with my husband and never once fed him yesterday, every day cooked anew, so that everything was fresh and baked goods every day. Every day is bad for him. And I wasn't lazy like you. You married, so be kind, be a great hostess, so that everything was cooked and that everything at home was clean, or else look, your husband will find another one. The one who will feed him and wash a fresh shirt, he will cook for the morning, will not be lazy. He wears t-shirts. Don't you talk back to me. You better listen to what your mother-in-law tells you, not what she says. Give me a deadline and you'll see for yourself. I won't. Lisa mumbled. I won't see anything. What? Speak louder. I have ears, not radios. You're mumbling, whispering. Haven't they taught you to speak properly? I'm tired, I said. Lisa said loudly, turning to her mother-in-law. Caroline's face was blurring into one solid pale blur, and Lisa was glad for the first time that she was losing her sight. At least she wouldn't have to watch Caroline's facial expressions play. It's not a pleasant sight, especially when you know you're about to hear something nasty. I'm gonna get some sleep, okay? Sleep? You're no use anyway. The mother-in-law sighed and went to the kitchen. Lisa, left alone in the room, quietly shut the door and sat on the bed without undressing. She was exhausted from the trip or from the bad news. Through the wall, she could hear her mother-in-law muttering unhappily. It was hard to make out the words, but in Caroline's case, the general meaning was clear. It was always the same. I wonder why I put up with the daily backstabbing and downright rudeness from this feisty old woman. No, I've learned not to be annoyed. I've even learned to ignore it. But why should I? All for the love of my husband? I suppose so. Does he love me? Maybe if he did, he wouldn't make me put up with this daily nonsense. Lisa was disgusted by her own thoughts. She'd never doubted Paul's love before. But before I wasn't in danger of being left blind and helpless, completely dependent on my husband and his blood-sucking mother. Before it, even if I did not realize it, but I was still sure that if a knife to my throat would come to me, I would leave everything here, get divorced, and survive perfectly well on my own. But now what? If Caroline won't let me go without a lecture now, what will happen when I go blind? Lisa stretched out on the bed and suddenly realized how tired she was. There was the long journey to the city and back, the doctor's disappointing prognosis, and the thoughts that were monstrous in their clarity. I'll think about it, but first I'll get some rest. She covered her eyes and fell asleep almost immediately. Her first thought upon awakening was, how could it be? After all, the doctor said there was still a week to go. The whole room was plunged into darkness, but turning her head, Lisa calmed down and even laughed at her fright. It had just gotten dark while she slept, with a young moon shining through the darkened window. What time was it? And why wasn't Paul back yet? He said he was only working half a day today, and already. Lisa looked at the screen of her phone. 12:30 and no message from her husband. She tried calling, but Paul's phone was off. Lisa, without letting the phone out of her hands, quickly went to the kitchen. Caroline must be awake. She could never get to sleep before 3:30 in the morning. Her mother-in-law was drinking tea. When she saw her daughter-in-law, she let out a long sigh. "Oh, oh, the queen is awake. Why did you work so hard that you fell asleep in the middle of the day? Did you carry sacks of potatoes?" "Maybe." "Caroline." Lisa ignored her mother-in-law's greeting. "Paul's phone's off. I'm worried. Did he call you to say he's late?" "No, he didn't." The mother-in-law answered calmly and took a sip of her drink. "And you're not worried?" "Me?" Caroline's voice was surprised. "Why should I? You're the one who sleeps on your back legs. You don't think about your husband, and I know where my son is." "Then where is he?" Lisa asked, barely containing herself. Caroline did not answer at once. She waited and waited and waited for her spectacular pause and carefully rustled something paper. "Probably a candy wrapper." "And you sit down," she said at last. "Sit down, Lisa. There's no truth in feet. Let's talk to you one last time." "One last time? What's she doing again? Is she going to die?" Lisa, in order not to cause another outburst of pathetic babble, obediently sank down on the chair. The mother-in-law kept rustling her fanatic. "I always knew you were a fool." Caroline stretched out. "And the main thing on Paul will not be offended that such a one chose. I taught him how to marry, son." I said, "So take the one that is dumber will be. From the smart is of little use. They are created for other things. For their universities, for scientific husbands. But you, a country boy, need a wife to obey you and take care of your family and children." Yes, that's how I taught him. "So he chose you for a fool, but he was wrong. There's no such thing as stupidity. You should have taken a woman who's happy to take care of the house, who's happy to take care of her husband and his mother. My Paul married wrongly. He should not have chosen you." "Where is Paul?" Lisa asked in an icy voice. "You know where he is, don't you?" The wrapper rustled again. "You're just pretending that everything is fine. You think I'm out of my mind? You think I don't know you can barely see now?" I know. It's been a week since I switched your mug with another one, and you don't even know it. I know you went to the doctor today and not your friend, so what good did they say? What's that got to do with it?" Lisa was indignant. "I was asking about Paul. What's that got to do with my eyesight? What does it have to do with your eyesight?" The mother-in-law grinned. "You've got a certificate with signatures and a stamp, and what does it say?" "That you'll be blind soon." "Why?" Lisa asked, slowly getting up. "Were you going through my things?" Only now she realized that Caroline had not been rummaging through Caroline's things, but the doctor's report, which she had brought in her bag and left in the hallway, hanging it on a hook and forgetting about it. Even after living with Caroline for 2 crazy years, Lisa had never imagined that her mother-in-law could rummage through other people's things, and her mother-in-law, meanwhile, had brazenly got into her bag and was not even ashamed to admit it. "Who gave you permission to do that?" "And I do not ask permission from anyone. I am in my house myself mistress. So I'll tell you something, my lovely daughter-in-law. Paul found someone else a long time ago, and he told me everything honestly, and now he's with her." "I didn't dare to tell you. I kept saying I felt sorry for Lisa. She loves me. And now I'll tell you, not him. A wretch like you can only live out his life in a stable." "In a stable, Lisa, not in a decent home. So get out of our house, Paul, and don't bother my eyes. Go now while I ask you to, and if you don't, beware." "Why should I beware?" Lisa asked with a grin. "Not you. Not me." The mother-in-law smiled venomously. "You should be afraid of your infirmity, not of me, because you are blind. What if you mistake coffee for poison? Oh, what shall we do then? Her face became serious. Without any mocking intonation, Caroline said very firmly, "Go away, Lisa. Go today now. Paul will come back, and I'll tell him you left him. I'll tell him that she's gone back to town, to her dissolute friends." "Damn you!" Lisa's voice broke out. "You have no shame, no conscience, that's all right, but no heart. Do you think he'll forgive you? You want to decide everything for your son, to control his fate like a toy." I wanted to. My mother-in-law readily agreed and decided. "My son, that's for me to decide. And remember, my dear, no one but a mother can know what's good for her son. You don't have any children of your own to talk to. Well, you better go pack your things, or Paul will probably be back soon." "Choke on my stuff," Lisa shouted. She ran out into the hallway and grabbed her bag from the hook. "Give it to your new daughter-in-law. It'll be cheaper," she added, and kicked open the door and left the house. Her first impulse was to stay here and wait for her husband to return. Let him look her in the eye, let him confess everything, or let him finally see what his mother was doing. But after a few seconds, Lisa realized that she would have to give up on this plan. She'd have to give it up so she wouldn't cry later. Let's say she stays here. Let's say she waits for Paul. And then what? That's what she's gonna tell him. "You know, Paul, your mom told me to get out of the house and told me that you have another woman." Very distinctly, clearly, as in a picture, she imagined her husband first lowering his thick, bushy eyebrows in surprise, and then shaking his head, disapprovingly, as if to say, "It's not good, as it turns out." And she already realizing that Caroline was not lying, she will still stand there and look at her husband with a bad, desperate hope. For what? Well, he'll say, "Since you know everything now, I've been thinking how to tell you myself. It's a pity, of course, that my mother beat me to it, but don't take offense at me, okay? This is life, not a fairy tale, not a movie. It happens a lot. You're good, kind, fair, but we don't fit together, and it's nobody's fault, I'm sorry." And his face will be so guilty and kind that she is likely to cry, and then for a long, long time cannot forgive himself and him this humiliation. And if there is no mistress, then what? He will go to his mother, and she, of course, will lie that she did not say anything like that, and could not have said anything like that, because Lisa is like a daughter to her. And whichever of them Paul believed, Lisa would still feel bad. Paul will start to persuade his mother not to quarrel, because they live in the same house, because Mom can't be left alone, and because her character is already formed, you can't change it. Well, and other nonsense, which, if you look at it in theory, light and not so stupid, but only to real life, it is not always adapted. Because theory is one thing, but practice is quite another. And then Lisa will have to return to this house, and she will not be able to forgive herself for such a humiliation for a long, long time. I've been having a lot of luck with stalemates lately. Lisa knew perfectly well that her mother-in-law was lurking like a mouse behind the curtain at the kitchen window, watching where her daughter-in-law would go. Will she sit on the doorstep like a dog or knock on the door and ask to go home? No, enough of this nightmare. She'll go back to town immediately. She'll wait until morning, and then she'll be there. Lisa looked in her purse just in case. It was a pity, of course, that the doctor's report had been left in Caroline's thieving clutches, but it was no big deal. The Institute should still have a copy. Everything is written on computer databases, not in the Middle Ages. We live in the 21st century, the time of high technology. There was still some cash, a bank card, and a passport in her purse, but having turned the bag over several times, Lisa realized with horror that both were gone. The bank card was still there, but it had been cut in half, and now the two unequal halves were lying at the bottom of the bag, scratching the silk lining with their sharp edges. Oh, Caroline, the most practical woman in the world, who could just kick her daughter-in-law out of the house, had to rip her off too. Well, to hell with her. After all, the phone with all the necessary applications is right here. All that remained was to decide on a place to stay. The first bus into town leaves at 6:30 in the morning. Where would she go until then? Knock on the neighbor's door, but they would let her in. There's nothing to talk about, but they would start asking questions, and she couldn't answer them now, and the whole village would be talking about it the next day. I'll sleep at school tonight, Lisa decided. Of course, it was summer and night, but the watchman should be there. He would let her in for sure. She didn't want to explain to the watchman, whose name was Bob, the reason for her night appearance, but on the other hand, she wouldn't sleep at the bus stop. And Bob had little interest in gossip. He had only one interest in this life: alcohol. As the summer twilight began to lighten, the school looked intimidating. Inappropriate among log cabins, an angular brick building with a broken window on the first floor, it was before the vacations. The children were playing soccer in the schoolyard. Well, the ball flew there. It looked like an abandoned building, the kind of building that photographers love and teenagers find romantic. Lisa herself used to love to climb such places. What could she find there? Treasure? No, everything was much more ordinary, just wanted to tickle her nerves. She ended up with a broken collarbone and a sprain. Lisa knocked on the locked front door. Bob, she called out. Open up, it's Lisa, let me in. But nothing was heard behind the door, no footsteps, not even a rustle. Bob, silence again. I see. The watchman had managed to use his main interest in life, and now he would not wake up at least from the cannon of the fields. Lisa sat down on the steps of the school and stared at herself with an unseeing gaze. She was alone outdoors at night after all. Amazing. She thought wistfully about the fact that, despite the 2 years she had spent in the village, she had never made any close friends here. And when? From work to home, from home to work, husband, house, vegetable garden, Caroline were to make friends when? Of course, she could call her friends in the city, ask them to come and pick her up, but for some reason she was ashamed to think about it. Lisa didn't like to think about it, but even now no memory was pleasant enough. All seemed trifling compared to the present trouble. After Lisa found out that her friends were still dating, she called each of them, and they all talked something like this. Sorry, Lisa, but that's life. You've fallen out of our circle, and we have nothing to talk about. What are your interests now? How do you make cheesecakes? How to get rid of parasites in your garden? You won't be interested in us. We won't be interested in you. It was unpleasant, hurtful, but at the same time, Lisa felt something like relief. At least now she wouldn't have to wonder what had happened. The only reliable companion she still had was Kevin, and it was his number she dialed. He arrived quickly and didn't even seem surprised by her call. He listened, said, "Wait, I'm on my way." And that was it. Kevin, he had always been like that, reliable and dependable, and Lisa felt a little calmer at the thought that she was not alone in this rapidly fading world. Someone cared about her. Someone was rushing in a car to pick her up in the middle of the night from the deserted steps of the school porch. Someone cared. He got out of the car with such a cheerful smile, as if he hadn't come to rescue his friend from trouble, but was going to a party. Hello, lost one. He smiled, helping Lisa up the steps. It's a little late for a ride. Come on, let's get in the car. Where's your stuff? Here. Lisa waved her purse. That's all my luggage. That's a lot. Kevin even whistled in surprise. Lisa shrugged. Look, why don't we pick up the rest? I'll go with you if I have to. Do I have to? No, she wrinkled her nose. I don't have to. Believe me, it's disgusting. That mother-in-law was there, touching my stuff. And the husband what? Kevin asked quietly. The husband ate a lot of pears. Lisa cut him off. No, I don't have a husband anymore. Shall we get out of here? She started toward the car, but stopped. Why did you stop so far away? The headlights are on. It's about 100 meters away. Kevin silently took her hand. Come on, the car is just a few steps away. What's wrong with you? Have you been drinking? No, she didn't answer. I have trouble with my eyes. I'll tell you everything on the way, but let's go quickly. I can't stand being here anymore. I'm sick of it. If Kevin had any more questions, he nobly suppressed the impulse to ask them immediately, and Lisa was grateful for his silence. He drove along the highway leading into town, watching the road carefully, and then Lisa slowly, stopping now and then, began to tell. And she herself was surprised at how much she had to tell about her mother-in-law who wouldn't let her pass, and about her husband who didn't seem to notice how unbearable the atmosphere at home was. She talked about how terrible it was to lose her eyesight and to know that soon you would be completely blind, and about how her friends didn't want to talk to her anymore, and about how she missed her cat, and about her old life in general. Kevin listened to her without interrupting, letting her talk. Lisa talked, and when she ran out of words, tears came. So they say, to look for a witch doctor, he said at last. Kevin had brought Lisa straight to his house, and now they were sitting in his cramped kitchen drinking very hot and sweet tea. They do, she confirmed. You know, all sorts of grandmothers, forest witches. They say there are more of them, but there were none in the village where I lived. Well, except there's one who works at the forge and cures infertility. If a woman comes to him at the forge, he does some magic, and 9 months later she has a baby. Kevin laughed. He laughed so long and contagiously that Lisa joined him. Good for you. At last Kevin said, wiping away his tears, Oh, well done. You can see at a glance that it's a strong sorcery. Tell me, does he take money for the treatment? No. Lisa laughed again. He says that for such a fee you cannot take, or you will not be able to heal. And they laughed again. Kevin had brought her back to life, even if unwittingly. At least she was herself again for the first time in months. Not the deathly frightened, almost blind Lisa, but the other Lisa she used to be. Calm, fun-loving, and laughing out loud. For a second, it even seemed to her that she had gone back a few years, and a lazy, lazy music was about to enter the kitchen. Her nostrils would smell the subtle aroma of fresh coffee and Paul. There was no Paul. There was no Paul. She tried to see Kevin's face, but nothing came out, just a speck of light and a cloud of red hair. No, there's no going back in time. It was just a dream. I'm probably gonna have to retrain now, said Lisa. I'll have to make money somehow. The doctor said blind people make good masseurs. It's good that you're making plans. Kevin approved, but don't rush into it yet. Maybe you'll come up with something. What's there to figure out? The doctors have given up on me. We'll see, he said meaningfully. Now go to sleep. The time is already 4:30 in the morning, and you and I have arranged a meeting. We'll put you on my bed, and I'll sleep on the sofa in the living room. Lisa did not object. Lying in bed, she was surprised to realize that she did not regret what had happened. On the contrary, it was as if a stone had fallen from her soul, so easily and freely. It even felt like her eyesight had returned a little, but it was just a feeling, wasn't it? Lisa, Kevin called to her softly from the living room. "Not cold out there." "Here we go," she laughed. "Stupid." Kevin was not indebted to her. "I was going to get you a second blanket, if you need one. Or you can get it yourself, in the closet on the right." Lisa laughed softly. She was a fool to think that Kevin was hitting on her for old times' sake. "No, I'm not cold." She smiled, burying her face in the pillow. "Thanks, Kevin." Meanwhile, Caroline was in the kitchen, stroking the arm of the sad Paul. "I guessed it a long time ago," she said sympathetically to her son. "You just did not want to tell you. All thought that I'm an old fool in these matters, understand, and it's how it turned out. So maybe she did not go to her lover?" Paul asked me sadly. "So just offended by something. She told me recently, 2 weeks ago, that she began to see badly. Crying, afraid that completely blind, and I told her, by the way, carelessly so, that come on, it's all nonsense, you read a lot." Nothing. Her mother waved it off. Now her what's his name, he will comfort her. What if she has no one after all? Paul said again, his voice ringing with desperate hope. Caroline drew a crumpled handkerchief from the neckline of her blouse and held it to her eyes. "What do you mean there's no one?" She sobbed. "If she told me herself." "Here, my son, she was sitting there, so brazen, so glossy, and she told me. 'Keep all my things, give them to the new Paul fool.'" "She said that?" He asked in confusion. "Yes, Sonny. And also says, and me my favorite, new everything will buy new, yes, such that you and in a dream never dreamed." So she left, grabbed her bag from the wall and left the house. Paul put his hands around his head. How could it be? His whisper was quiet, as if he had forgotten his mother's presence and was addressing himself. "How can it be, Lisa?" Caroline sighed, then rose heavily from her chair. "Son, I'm going to bed. My strength is gone. I'm aching for you." On the table, misplaced and lonely, stood a vase with a bouquet of small bush roses. Paul had brought them from the city for his wife. In the morning, waking up on a wide bed in an unfamiliar room, Lisa didn't immediately realize where she was, but then her fully awake brain began to plant a memory of yesterday. She remembered how she'd sat on the school porch, how Kevin had come to pick her up, and then she felt a burning sense of shame that she'd never once called him during her 2 years of marriage, never asked him how he was doing. And he said, "Call, don't disappear," but where was it? He only sent congratulatory messages twice a year on holidays. Christmas and her birthday, and when she had a problem, Kevin came at night. A friend. With some difficulty, Lisa managed to check the missed calls on her phone. None. All the better. After last night's story, Lisa didn't feel like talking to her husband. And about what? The impending divorce? They have no children, nothing to divide. Paul will be subpoenaed. No other topics of conversation, none. Since there was nothing to do, Lisa decided to spend the day thinking about the future. The option was to move back to her parents in their tiny backwoods town. That was the first thing that came to mind, but Lisa wasn't going to be a burden to them. In the evening, she would ask Kevin for help to find some massage courses. Then she would get a new profession, and when she arrived at her parents' house, she could get a job. Her parents would be able to help her adapt to her new life a little. This thought cheered her up, and Lisa decided to start adjusting now. She got out of bed and, closing her eyes, groping along the walls, walked around one room after another. At first, she was a little afraid to move blindly, but as the doctor had promised, the sensitivity of her other perceptual organs had sharpened for lack of sight. Lisa noticed that she could distinguish the textures of stone, wood, plaster walls, metal faucets better than before. She liked the kitchen table the best. It was real wood and was pleasantly warm. Leaning lower over the countertop, Lisa could catch the faint, muted smell of varnish, the scent of pine forest. She was immediately reminded of her childhood, of her reluctance to go into the woods with her parents. She remembered so clearly the odors of pine needles, the resin that froze in viscous drops on the cones, the fire, that for a brief moment she was able to feel it right here in the kitchen of the city apartment. Then she began to relearn the telephone. First of all, she should forget about manual typing. Only voice typing for now. Lisa tried recording a few voice messages to herself and was generally satisfied. Her voice in the recording was very pleasant. The next task she came up with for herself was to try and carefully make her bed without opening her eyes. The biggest challenge was the bedspread. When Lisa didn't try, and she couldn't get it straightened properly, one corner hanging down the other. Desperate to cope with such a difficult task, Lisa tried simply folding the blanket, corner to corner, but she encountered many obstacles along the way. "I'll learn anyway." Stubbornly, she gritted her teeth as she fought with the blanket. The whole day flew by in such simple, but now newly challenging tasks. In the evening, Kevin didn't come home alone. "Meet Lisa. This is my grandmother, Vanessa." "Hello." Lisa said hello. She couldn't see who she was addressing. Her eyesight wasn't worse today, thank God, but it wasn't better either. She still saw only vague outlines of objects, but she was glad of it. Judging by the size of the outlines, Kevin's grandmother was a tall and full elderly woman. "My name is Lisa, Grandma Vanessa." She heard a cheerful female voice. "You sit, don't get up." "Kevin?" "What, Grandma?" "Get out of here, stay in your room until I call you." Lisa bit her lip. She felt that Kevin had brought her grandmother for a reason, and it made her feel very insecure. When she heard her friend's footsteps receding, she smiled at the big blur named Grandma Vanessa. "Would you like some tea?" "I'll pour some," Sadie said. A strong hand lay on her shoulder and pushed Lisa back into the chair. "Sit down and be quiet. I need to look at you." Lisa obediently remained silent. The hand that nailed her to the chair smelled of herbs. There was peppermint and a subtle note of lavender and some other almost indistinguishable but very pleasant odor. Baba Vanessa did not utter a sound. She took her hand off her shoulder but didn't move a step away from her. She was probably looking at her. Lisa remembered that a long time ago, Kevin had said that his grandmother was a real forest herbalist and that everyone went to her for treatment, even injured animals who tried to crawl to Vanessa's door, and she nursed them all back to health, no matter if they were human or animal. Then Lisa let the story pass her ears, even thought that Kevin had made up such a colorful relative. It turned out that Kevin had not made it up. He had told the truth, and she had been a fool not to believe it. It was very uncomfortable to sit like that, not moving and not opening her mouth. But in a few seconds, Lisa felt a slight warmth on her face, as if someone's invisible, but obviously kind, caring hands touched her temples. Obedient to this pleasant warmth, she closed her eyes, and tiny golden sparks immediately flashed under her eyelids. "Sit, sit, sit." Vanessa murmured and put her palm on the back of Lisa's head. "Sit still. I'll look at it again." Lisa did not move. "I see. Everything is with you, girl." Vanessa spoke softly and shouted in a strong, loud voice. "Kevin, come here. It's okay." "Here I am, Grandma. I have a bottle of water in my bag. Take it out. You will wipe her eyes with it every night. And when the water runs out, she'll see." "That's it?" Kevin was confused. "You don't need anything else?" "Yes." Vanessa laughed. "At least give me some tea. I'm thirsty." Kevin also laughed briefly. Lisa, your doctor was right. Medicine failed, but my grandmother did it easily. Grandma Vanessa. Lisa decided to speak up. What's wrong with me? The doctors couldn't diagnose me. And they won't. The herbalist answered. The spoil on you is strong. Doctors do not treat it. We can do it and do. And who? She couldn't see, but she could clearly imagine Vanessa shrugging her shoulders. I don't know, but I'll tell you this. Who put this spoil on you will soon stop seeing. As soon as you find out who of your acquaintances has gone blind, it means that it is him. Lisa felt uncomfortable with the lightness with which it was said. She squirmed in her chair and suggested, How about I rub my eyes for the first time right now? Let me help you. Kevin moistened a cotton pad with healing water and gently dabbed Lisa's eyes. Water and water. When she opened her eyes, nothing had changed. Is this really going to help? She asked Kevin as he walked her grandmother home. I think water is water. It will, Kevin said with conviction. Maybe not right away, though. As Lisa fell asleep, she tried to figure out if the living water would help. Would it save her from the oncoming blindness? She would have Kevin's confidence that it would help, and that was it. She didn't think so herself. The next morning, Lisa woke up and suddenly realized that she could make out a pattern on the bedclothes, multicolored polka dots, as if confetti had been scattered on the bed. What's that? She shrieked, touching the little colored spots with her fingers. Bare feet slapped quickly down the hallway, and Kevin's voice was suddenly very close by. What's wrong, Lisa? She looked up at him and smiled happily. Kevin, I can see the beginning. She remembered Kevin, red-haired, white-skinned, with open green eyes and a slight smile on his beautiful lips. I haven't seen you in so long, she said, not caring at all what she said. I loved you so much. Kevin remained silent. She must have embarrassed him with her thoughtless confession. I'll, he muttered, go to the kitchen, make coffee there. I remember cinnamon for you. Lisa was just as embarrassed. She shouldn't have told him that, but why not? She really loved him, so why couldn't she say it? Lisa remembered how a few years ago they had woken up together, and Kevin had gone to make them cinnamon coffee, just as he did now. His apartment had been smaller then, but it was big enough for her. Kevin would make coffee and whistle to himself, and Lisa would get up and follow him, because she loved to watch him barefoot in a sheet, making sure the boiling drink didn't escape. Lisa sat on a low stool and watched her lover. Silently she adored him, and it seemed there was no one in the world more perfect. How tall he seemed to Lisa, from her vantage point. How beautifully the sun played on his red hair. How easily, with what effortless grace did he move. Kevin, from time to time, turned around to smile at her. And certainly there was no other smile like it in the whole world. How much could be put into one smile? Lisa even squeezed her eyes shut to visualize it as clearly as possible. A turn of Kevin's head, just a slight turn, and already a fiery strand of hair falls carelessly on his high forehead. His green eyes flash with affectionate amusement. The corners of his lips lift. When you smile like that, Lisa once said, I feel like I've got an arrow in my heart. There's no room left. That's how much I love you. How long did their happy love last? Lisa couldn't remember. Maybe a few months, maybe a lifetime. How simple it had been then, simple and very real, and how stupidly it had ended. Lisa remembered that day, and now it all appeared to be a dream. Here she is standing in the airport, for some reason in Kevin's jacket, and from tears she can't see anything around her, but Kevin is still with her. Lisa presses herself against him, trying to breathe in his scent, to memorize the sensation of his soft curls on her face. I'll be back. I'll be back soon. Don't cry. When I get my father back on his feet, I'll be right back." Why? Why didn't she go with him then? Kevin's father had been in some terrible accident, and it took a long time to recover. Week after week, and then the weeks turned to months. Kevin called her every day, but there was nothing comforting to report. So far, things were still a little creaky. "I guess I'll have to stay a little longer." "Don't be mad. I miss you so much." And Lisa wasn't angry. How could she be angry with someone who was her whole world? But with each new day, it seemed to her that drop by drop, joy, fun, love were leaving her life. She was less and less interested in work, movies, hanging out with friends. Once at the very end of her vacation, just out of desperation, Lisa signed up for a one-day excursion and then promised herself never to do it again. The excursion was so boring that Lisa could hardly wait to get home. The quiet fall days dragged on, and Kevin never returned. Lisa tried to stay at work longer and even organized a literary club for high school students. It was a good idea, promising, but Lisa quickly lost interest in it, and everything that wasn't about Kevin. In the evenings, Lisa couldn't stay at home and spent hours wandering the autumn streets, buying herself a cup of coffee and forgetting to drink it. And when she remembered, it was already cold, and she only had to send the cup with its contents to the nearest trash can. She was also uncomfortable among people, but the crowd was strangely soothing and gave her a sense of belonging. Your love may be far away from you, but you are not alone. Tired of walking the streets and looking at shop windows, Lisa sat down on some bench and looked endlessly at the sky, hoping that the sun would peek through the blue clouds for a second. But it seemed that the sun was carried away by her beloved in his hair. And then, when Lisa had given up all hope of seeing Kevin, Paul appeared. He noticed the lonely girl sitting on a bench on a windy evening and could not pass by. Her face was too desperate, like a frozen mask of longing. Lisa remembered well how Paul had persuaded her to go to a coffee shop, bought her some hot tea, made sure she drank it without waiting for it to get cold, and then walked her home. All the next week, when he came home from work, he would stop by to bring her cakes, give her a flower, or just sit with her in the kitchen. That cold fall, Paul warmed her with his simple, uncomplicated kindness. The calls from Kevin were beginning to annoy her. Lisa still loved him, longed for him, but suddenly it seemed that he was just stalling, and in fact his father was long gone, just like Kevin there, in the distant northern city. That's why he's in no hurry to come home. And maybe he has already got a girlfriend there. How, after all, a young and healthy man can endure so long without a woman's attention? Or did he even get married and say nothing? And Paul wasn't that appealing at all. Perhaps he wasn't even interesting. But he was there, always, invariably, for sure. Never asked for anything, but always ready to fulfill any request. And her heart, hungry for warmth, was drawn to him more and more. She promised him nothing, and he was willing to wait as long as it took. Not complaining, not resenting, not grumbling. The day Lisa had already packed all her things and was just waiting for Paul to move with him to the village, Kevin suddenly showed up, although the word "showed up" would be more appropriate. He came without a call, without a message, hoping to surprise his beloved, but the surprise was waiting for him. "I'm getting married." "Simple," she said. "I'm waiting for my fiancé to come and pick me up. I've already taken the cat in, and he's going to live with Kathy." Kevin nodded thoughtfully. Is that the tall girl, the black one? From your Saturday night club? She is." Lisa shivered as if from a gust of icy wind. The words, empty and indifferent, courteous, all of them seemed to fall through, like a coin in a piggy bank, rattling away, but nothing important, Nothing really important was said. And then Lisa made up her mind. "I'm sorry, Kevin," she said. "I really loved you and waited for you. But I didn't. You never came back and neither did I." "I couldn't come back sooner," he interrupted. "You know that." "Yes, I know, but I guess I was just tired, not of living, but just waiting and waiting and waiting. And when he came along, I realized I could live my life. My life, not just waiting for you to come back. Do you understand me?" Again, the same slow, thoughtful nod. "I understand. I guess I do. And you're not angry with me." "No, I hope everything works out well for you, Lisa. Call me, don't disappear." So much for that, she thought as she looked at his tall figure. He walked without noticing the cold, without slipping on frozen puddles, his hands in his pockets, his shoulders turned, his red hair branching and bouncing with every step he took. Lisa kept waiting for him to stop, to turn back, or at least stop to wave at her, to smile goodbye. Look back at me." But he didn't look back. 3 years later, "Kevin, I'm here," shouted a spectacular young woman standing at the entrance to the mall. A tall man, standing out in the crowd with the fiery color of his hair, hurried over to his friend. "I couldn't find a parking space," he said, smiling. "Did you miss me, Lisa?" "I always miss you," she replied and rose up on her tiptoes to kiss her lover. Passersby looked at them with amusement. The times we live in are like a Formula One rally, the speed and the control of the situation. You don't see that kind of leisurely tenderness very often anymore. Shall we? Kevin took Lisa's hand and the two of them walked through the open doors. "We need to choose tiles for the bathroom," Lisa listed. "We also need to look for a comfortable sofa for the nursery. If the baby gets restless, we can at least rest next to the crib for a while." "Not in a hurry?" Kevin laughed. "We still have 7 months to go. And they'll fly by before you know it. And there'll be 3 of us already." Yes, they heard a voice behind them and turned around. Paul, already quite worn out and weighted up, was standing behind them and was fiddling with his phone. "Time flies by," he said, shrugging his shoulders. "Sometimes it seems to you that your wife left you only yesterday, and then, as you think about it, it's been 3 years. Lisa tensed slightly and instinctively covered her stomach with her palm. "I hope, Paul," she said, "that those 3 years have turned out to be very happy ones for you." I'm glad your mother told me everything. I was angry with her then, but now I realize it was for the best. You would have hesitated to go to your girlfriend and agonized, and I would have." Paul's face reflected bewilderment mixed with a fair amount of curiosity. "What are you saying?" "What girl? To whom I would not dare to go. How could you?" Lisa was confused. "Your mom told me so herself the night I left. Allegedly you have one. You were only going to work half a day that day, remember? I was waiting for you and your phone was off, so I went to ask your mom if she knew where you were. I was worried, you know. And your mom told me that you're with your mistress now, that you've been together for a long time, and you don't dare to leave because you feel sorry for me. I really do." Paul smiled sadly. "I was late because I had an accident. Not serious, no, it's nothing like that. I don't think I even had a scratch on me, but while all that was being processed, while I was looking for a car service, time passed." "I didn't know." Lisa gasped. "But why didn't you call me when you got home? At least we would have explained ourselves to each other like human beings." Paul looked away. "Mom said you left me on your own for a lover." Lisa looked at her ex-husband, speechless. "Yes, that's how it turned out," he said and smiled his kind bear smile. "Mom?" Lisa barely spoke. "Your mom should play chess, a strategist like they don't make anymore." "Yeah," Paul agreed awkwardly. Kevin, who had been silent all this time, tactfully reminded himself. Lisa, I'll go and look at the tiles, and you two talk. I'll meet you in the cafeteria, okay? He's not offended. Paul asked. He won't be jealous. Lisa shook her head. No, we're too expensive for each other to be jealous. Kevin knows I'm nowhere near him now. She smiled, remembering the day she had her final epiphany. It was early morning, and Kevin was barefoot and wrapped in a sheet, making them coffee. Lisa tiptoed up behind him and, without thinking, hugged him. She shouldn't have thought about it, because then she would have gotten scared, hesitated, and never done what she'd been dreaming about for days. And standing there, no closer, her forehead against his back, she suddenly realized she was home. Kevin stood still on the floor, with a long coffee spoon in his hands, and seemed to have stopped breathing. You, he asked quietly. Just don't let me go again, do you hear me? Don't ever let go. Never, she echoed. That morning, for the first time in Kevin's extensive practice, their coffee ran off. I'm happy for you, brought her back to the present by Paul's voice. Honestly, Lisa, I'm really glad you're doing well, that you love each other. That wouldn't have happened to me. I'm too much of the slumbering type, she grinned. Well, if only a little, Paul. No, I blame you. With a mom like mine, I should have decided to move, and I just kept stalling. Well, you were just taking care of her. Lisa objected. Paul thought for a moment. No, he said, I mean that too, but the main reason was something else. I just didn't want to change anything. I was comfortable, with my wife and mother around, and I didn't have to look for a new place to live, settle down, spend my time, energy, and money. It seemed to me that if I would humor and wiggle long enough, everything would somehow fall into place. It probably did, but we both, admittedly, envisioned it a little differently. Lisa finished. She looked at him almost fondly. After all, this simple, clumsy lout was not a bad man. There was no meanness or guile in him. The only thing that let him down was his excessive softness of character, which did not allow him to make a choice in time. He wanted too much to live in peace among his loved ones. And he did not take into account the fact that it was not always possible, but still he was a kindred man for her. And Lisa really wanted him to have his own puzzle of a happy life. And how is your mom? She asked, so as not to be silent. How's Caroline's health? Yes, not so good, Paul admitted reluctantly. You know, after you left, my mom suddenly started to lose her eyesight very fast. The doctors couldn't do anything. They just said it doesn't happen like that. And after a month, she went completely blind. Oh, Lisa burst out. Yes, but you know it changed her a lot. She gets along very well with my second wife. Praises her all the time, says how lucky she is to have a daughter-in-law. She keeps telling me how lucky I am to be married. I don't even recognize her sometimes, and on Sundays, she always asks me to take her to church. She prays a lot. I was even a little worried at first. How could a person change so drastically? I thought maybe she had something wrong with her head. But then I realized that everything's fine. It just happens. Can you believe it? Miracles. Lisa smiled. But I'm happy for you. Now I'm going to go. Paul, okay. My husband's waiting for me. Bye.